Greetings, everyone. This is Josh, and we have another episode of Horror Hangouts tonight. And tonight, my guest is the director of a of the movie "Do No Harm," which you can find on YouTube, and his name is Don Johns. How are you doing this evening, Don?
I'm doing fantastic, and I really appreciate you wanting to talk to me about this crazy movie I made. And it's pretty old, 2012.
Wow, so it has been a while.
Yeah.
So, what had got? Why don't you first explain a little bit without giving away too much what "Do No Harm" is about?
Well, it's your typical. It's funny. I was going to originally, I had an idea for the title Detour, but I think that's been used like many, many times.
Hmm.
But it's similar to that, where you've got four young people. They're driving around. It's at night. They get lost. They drive up into a house with some creepy people, and all hell breaks loose.
Well, and what's fun about this is it does kind of start off, but I think you did a little something unique instead of these people just being flat out, um, slashers or something like that. There's a little bit more depth to, especially with one of the characters, I guess you would call him the father of the household, so to speak. We learn a little bit more and get a little bit of an insight to what his motivations are, I suppose.
I
So that kind of
appreciate that. I if we get down, what the one of the last questions you had was about my directors, and I had to mention, even though he's never done any horror, but
like,
I have to give props to Clint Eastwood, because if you're a Clint Eastwood fan, that's how his movies are built. He builds those characters, and uh, to me, it's the payoff. When you build the depth in the character, then when
hmm
something happens to him, it's the payoff. So I appreciate that you picked up on that. A lot of people have accused me of the film starts off too slow,
hmm
um, but that's intentional. I'm trying to build that tension, but I think it's a two-edged sword, because I think some people might turn the movie off because they aren't patient enough to um, wait for anything to happen.
Well, yeah, and me being a little bit of a writer, I'm kind of cognizant of, I don't even know if it's the right word, of doing that where you have to really build your characters. And I think my favorite movies or stories are when we get a little bit chance to get to know the characters. So that way, when the character is in danger or is in peril, it makes it that whole scenario, that whole scene, that much more tense. And
Yeah,
if you are going to get scared, you're going to get scared for them more than anything, I think.
yeah, yeah. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, my wife was even saying, maybe you should cut that down. But I'm like, I'm hoping that it's going to build that tension. And I think it's one of those things where you either get it or you don't. And the people
Hmm.
that get it, they watch the film, and the people that, they want to see somebody get their throat slashed in the first 5 minutes, and they turn it off. Um,
Right. I
and
think
there's nothing I can do about that.
no, no, you've made the movie. I think sometimes, it just kind of depends. I think as long as you're invested in the characters from the beginning, and if you're willing to be patient to see where it goes, I think it just sometimes requires patience. I sometimes think if you look like at a movie like Halloween, for example, right off the bat, he kills his sister, but then after that, the rest of the movie takes time for it to breathe after that. So you
Yeah.
get your little attention getter, and then you can start following these characters and following what's going on. I just use that as one example. They do the same thing in Jaws, kind of as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, I don't want to give too much of the movie away, but,
Hmm.
um, I open with the scene where, the person's being buried. So I felt like
Hmm.
that might pull them in.
Right.
And then the other part where I tried to bring a little bit more of a gotcha moment was when they stop at that convenience store. Um,
Hmm.
and that's another place where I was hoping that, like if I'm about to lose folks because they've been driving around the car all night, that was another opportunity where, maybe that would pull them back in because, like, what the hell? And I'll tell you right now that that scene didn't work like I wanted it to because of
Mhm.
the makeup fail. And I don't want to give it away, but I think
Right.
you can remember the clerk at the counter. Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and there's supposed to be something going on with him, and that's my bad direction that I didn't. I think it would have been a lot better if I had done a better job on that scene.
On that one scene there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I guess trust me, I know, there are times I go back, I'm like, "God, why did I write it that way? I should have wrote it
yeah,
this way instead." Yeah, I think anybody who creates any type of art form will always go back because 'cause we're our own worst critics and say, I should have done that a little bit differently," and so
yeah.
forth, and yeah, I think that's common, but I think overall the movie worked pretty well. So, what inspired you to write the plot in the first? Was there anything specific that inspired you to write this particular story and make this particular movie?
Well, it's really two things. Before Do No Harm, I had tried to make a bigger budget film called Dead Generations,
Hmm.
which you can check that out on my website. I got some clips of it. Got a radio show I did for it. I tried to raise money on Kickstarter. This was in 2010.
Hmm.
Um, I raised $500, and I was trying to make like about 20,000.
Yeah.
And that $500 came from my wife. She was the only one, the only person that donated to my campaign. So Do No Harm kind of came from that because I'm like, okay, I don't have 20,000, 30,000, $15,000 to make this movie. So my wife said, "Hey, I've got a little bit of money in a savings account. I had one that I'd had a long time, and we squirreled up almost $7,000 between the two of us."
Hmm.
And so she said, make your movie. Maybe you can't make that one, but you can make something else." So I had to say that because Do No Harm would have never even been written if Dead Generations had been made. So it was
Ah.
kind of like I sat down and I started writing it. And being that I've been doing production for so many years, I can kind of start writing stuff out and you start thinking, well, that's going to be too expensive. You've got, multiple actors, you've got props. So in my mind, I can kind of write a scene and kind of think about if it's going to be an expensive scene or a cheap scene. So as I was writing Do No Harm, I kept thinking, yeah, that might be too expensive. So I would, and I kept doing that through the whole time I was writing the script. And that's really how the whole thing kind of happened. And then when I wrote my first script, like, gosh, 2005, I think I wrote, which I still haven't made. It's called The Dishwasher. It's a fictional biographical thing about me. Um,
Hmm.
and when I first wrote that, I met a lady who was in the North Carolina Film Commission, and I told her I wanted to write a script, and she said, "Write things that you know, because if you try to do something that you don't, it's gonna not be authentic." So the second thing about Do No Harm is how it came about because there's residents, medical residents. There's the doctor.
Right.
I did when I got out of college in '98. I worked for Vanderbilt University Medical Center as their media specialist. So for 5 years, I'm hanging out with residents and doctors. So that, I guess, kind of stuck with me. So I kind of, like you were saying, it's not your typical story. So I used, Bo, his character, he's a resident, and then his girlfriend's also a resident. Bo's just his friend, but then they run into the doctor. So I kind of used that
Hmm.
because of being there, hearing the lingo, and the drug that I talk about is actually a legit drug. I even ran that by
Oh, wow.
one of the doctors in one of the scenes. He's actually a real doctor, and he helped me with that scene to make sure that was right. So that's sort of in a nutshell how that whole story came about. And it was just, there's so many things that I wanted to do, but then,
Mm.
like I said, I would start, literally going online and This is kind of crazy. I was looking up like fake body parts because there was a scene in the film where I wanted Bo to trip and it's dark and he falls on the ground and he's like, "What did I just trip over?" You know, it was his, well, it was body parts. So I was gonna have like an arm, some
Right.
legs coming up out of the ground, like they'd been kind of halfway buried. Well, I mean, that just would blow through my budget just buying one arm,
Wow.
1 foot, one hand, and you have to start eliminating those things and say, well, what's the most important part of the script? So it was kind of crazy. I mean, if someone said, here's, $40,000, well, then you could do a lot more.
Right.
You could literally hire some extras and have them lay on the ground, and pay them to do that. So that's sort of how the whole script came about. It wasn't like I just sat down one day and said, hey, I'm going to write a horror movie. And I guess the biggest reason why I wrote it, is because you can make a horror movie cheap. When you look at horror movies, that's how
Right.
that's why they're made, because you
Mhm.
can make them on the cheap. And that's really probably the biggest reason why I wrote horror, because all of my other scripts that I've written, they're just mass budgets. I've got a couple that aren't as big, but anything you look up on the screen, you're looking, even an independent film today is 12-15 million dollars.
Right.
You know, so to make a film for $7,000 is just absolutely insane.
Well, you pulled it off pretty well, I think, with just $7,000. Um, so what got you into filmmaking? You mentioned you had been in production before. So what got you into filmmaking?
Well, I have to go all the way back to the 6th grade, and this is on my website too if you want to watch it. It's called The $16 Man Plus Tax. Shot on 8 millimeter film. Me and some friends in the neighborhood, we made it. And I think that experience is what got the hooks in me. And it wasn't so much making the film, but it was we got to get out of class and roll the projector around and show it, to the high school. And
Right.
so, you kind of felt like a rock star. And I think I kind of like that whole, like after we showed it, for weeks and months after that, people would say, "Yo, man, I saw that crazy movie y'all made. That was crazy, man." And so, you that's kind of stuck with me. And then a couple years later, my mom could tell that I really was a creative kid, and she got me my own 8 millimeter camera, and it didn't have any sound. And it was mostly just me doing scenery and stuff like that. But I think I was already starting to capture things. I'm starting to frame things up and trying to go after the light, and that's what got me started. But it wasn't until uh, let's see, like the late '80s, and I was working collections. It was the worst job. If you've ever worked collections, oh my god, I
No,
literally
I've been on the other end of that, but not.
I've been on the other end as well. But that was a terrible job. I mean, I would call people, they'd start crying, "How did you find me?" Oh, and I'm gonna pay it, and you feel terrible. And a lot of times I would just not do anything because I'm just
Right.
not good at that. I'm not a cutthroat person. So while I'm literally at this job, I was in Nashville. I went there to pursue music. I started going through the yellow pages and I thought, what do I like to do? I like making movies. I like shooting videos. So I started going through the yellow pages, calling every single production company in Nashville. And I had kind of a little script, and I told them I haven't experience. The only experience I've got is made some crazy 8 millimeter films when I was a kid. And, they hang up on me. So I just kept going down. And of course, my supervisor would walk by, go, "Yes, sir, we're going to get you that money," and then, I'd act like I was really still
Doing
working.
something.
Yeah. And so finally I call this one guy. It was, I think it was called Action Video. And I did my script, and there's this long pause. And I'm like, did he just hang up? And he says, "Hey," he said, "You sound like a pretty nice guy." And he said, I tell you what, I've got an extra camera. How about he did weddings, professional
Uh-huh.
weddings, and he said, "How about you show up this Saturday, and I'll let you film with the other camera, and then I'll take a look at your footage, and we'll just go from there." And that literally launched me into making a living at doing video production. And so then all through those years, if you know anything about film, cameras, video is at 30 frames a second.
Mhm.
And so film is 24. And that's what gives you that romantic, that beautiful look. And so I kept trying to make little stories, but it's like I didn't understand. I didn't go to film school. I didn't understand that. I do now.
Right.
And I'm like, why does this look like video? You know, and it's because of the 30 frame. And
Right.
then in 2002, Panasonic came out with one of the first affordable standard definition 24p
Mhm.
DX100. That was my first camera where I could actually see what I had in my eye. And I'm like, that's it. That's it. And so then a couple years later, they came out with high definition 24p. And I still have that camera, the HVX 200. And that's where I shot my first short film, On My Last Breath. And that's when everything changed for me because I started doing film festivals, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. I got to somehow figure out a way to make a living at this. And so it's been a long, long journey. Like I have a book about it. It's called Do No Harm, The Making and Do No Harm. But I literally start from where you and I just talked about, where I go all the way back because I think it's important to see.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of people say, well, gosh, how did you get to do that? They don't understand that it's a long, long journey. I mean, I don't know of
Oh
anybody
yeah.
that just, you know, one day says, I'm going to write a script and I'm going to make a feature film. Like all your directors, you look back,
Right.
they started really humbly. And then you just kind of keep working your way and you just don't give up. And so, um, I think I made that first film in 2007, On My Last Breath. And then it wasn't until 2012 that I made my first feature and my only feature.
Right.
I wish I had more features. My other short, it's only 3 minutes shy of a feature.
Mhm.
Again, I was too stupid to know that, and I could have made it into a feature if I just edited a 3 more minutes into it. But again, I don't have any training. I just kind
what's
of
the
wing
what's
it.
the cutoff between a feature and a short then?
I think it's 43 minutes.
Okay.
I think it's 40, and don't quote me on that, but you could probably Google it. But I think it's 43 minutes or 46 minutes, and that doesn't include credits. So it's like you can't make a 40-minute
Along
movie and then have 18 minutes of credits to be considered a feature.
right, from basically start of the movie
Yeah,
to the actual end before the
yeah,
credits scene. Okay, well, so like I said, it's just a really long process. It's kind of like almost anything else. Like if you're in, you know this too, because you're in music, trying to get a group of musicians together, write songs, and just hope you can like. Of course, nowadays you can make your own, record your own music or whatever, and release it, but it's still probably a struggle getting that out for people to hear and whatnot. And it's same thing with movies.
yeah.
So so overall, and maybe you alluded to it a little bit, but what was the most difficult part of making Do No Harm? Besides maybe the budget, operating within that thin budget.
Uh, I think everything about making Do No Harm was difficult. I already talked about the budget. Um, And luckily, I understand how to do spreadsheets. And so, if you don't, you can make formulas. So basically, I had
Mhm.
a spreadsheet where, I first, you have to break down your script. So you've got your actors, and then you figure out how many days they're going to be filming, how many days the other guys are going to be filming. So literally, just going from, I was going to pay $50 a day or night, depending on what we were filming. And my wife said, let's do $80. And just when you add that $30, even
Mhm.
to such a small cast, that'll just, that's $500,
Right.
$600, $700. So that was really difficult where I had to literally, I don't know how many months I spent on that just trying to figure out how to spend that under $7,000. I had props I had to buy. We put them up in a hotel. We were gonna, do like Subway for food, all these things that you have to really start thinking
Adds up
about.
quick.
So that was really difficult. And then the second thing, which a lot of people don't understand, like on a big film, the way that it works, let's say that we're going to film down at Burger King. First of all, they're
Mm,
going to cover it up so you don't know it's Burger King and it's Burger Hut or something.
right.
But then you pay that restaurant, you work out a price, how much you guys normally make in a 12-hour or however long you're going to have that place. And you literally pay them to be shut down to use their location. But when you're like somebody like me without a budget, you're at the mercy of them saying, yes, I'll help you out and not charge you. So that was the hardest thing. But I tell you what was just, it's like the stars lined up. If you look at that location, um, that was amazing. We filmed almost the entire film there, and that just worked out perfect because it had the house, it had the yard, it had that creepy shed, it had all these elements, and I was able to use that. And I told my wife, I said, if we can get that location, I can make this movie. And once we got that, I was on my way, and I'm like, nothing's stopping me now. And then I guess the other thing that made it difficult, excuse me, was not having a crew. Um, so I'm making props, I'm doing makeup, I'm doing audio, I'm directing, I'm doing everything, and that's a lot of work. I don't think I just turned 60.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if I could do that now. Physically, I'm starting to slow down. I get tired easier. Um, I mean, I was exhausted, but the adrenaline of making that film just, I didn't sleep for probably 3 months. Uh,
Wow.
because literally, I couldn't just come home and go to sleep. I had to get rid of the footage, back it up on the hard drives and make sure that I got all my shots, make sure all my focus was good, make sure the audio, because you don't want to let somebody go
Hmm.
and then have them to come back and pay them, for the hotel again. So, I would be doing that during the day because most of it was night shooting.
Right.
And so I would go through all that footage, and then, it's 6 o'clock and, actors are showing up. It's 8 o'clock. We got to get ready to film again. So
Hmm.
we only shot in 12 days, which a lot of people are like, wow, that's a really tight schedule. And it really was. And I wanted more. But again, you start adding those days in and it just starts ballooning your budget. Um, so it was difficult, but I was just, I loved it. I mean, my wife said she'd never seen me as happy as I was when we made that film. And I'm like, sweetie, I'm in my element. This is just fantastic.
Would you say, my next question could be, what was the most rewarding part of making that film? Was it just getting it done, or just the whole process of doing it, I guess?
I think not just that film, but I think for just film production in general is sometimes you capture these moments on film. And I think that's why we're drawn to movies. We watch a movie because there's those moments, there's that monologue, like Kevin
Hmm.
Costner, Dad,
Hmm.
you want to catch?
Yeah.
You know, that'll stick with you for the rest of your life. And it's like when you're making those moments, and I don't want to give it away, but you know what I'm talking about at the end of the
Hmm.
film where Bo is holding up his hands.
Oh yeah.
Uh that was not scripted. After we shot that, I'm like, what made you do that? And he said, I just felt like that's the way it made me feel. So it's like moments like that, the uh Dave at the end. It's so hard. I don't want to give it away.
Right.
But I'm talking about at the very end, uh when Dave was we'll have to talk about it after camera. But anyway, there's so many moments
Right.
that I think that and the premieres of every time that I've premiered my film,
Hmm.
having the actors there, seeing them see themselves up on screen. Because I tell you what, it was an incredible experience when I made Without Hope. that actually got to be shown at a theater,
Oh, wow.
and that's the only film
Mhm.
that I've ever had at a theater. And man, let me tell you, that 720p, it looked fantastic. It was a real legit, 35 by 70, feet
Mhm.
theater screen. And a lot of people thought that I'd shot on 16 millimeter. Um, so that's a big thrill, is when it's done, and the applause, and people coming up, man, how did you do that? And that is probably the highlight of making movies, when you get to do that. When we premiered Do No Harm, my wife and I sat in the back
Uh-huh.
and watching people grab each other, and uh
Oh, that's always a good thing to
yeah,
see there, especially for a horror film that they're
yeah.
getting a little bit scared there, so
Yeah,
good.
so I mean, it's so many things. I mean, I love, because a lot of people, they've asked me, I've been interviewed a lot over the years, and they'll always ask me, what's your favorite part? Filming, editing, the music. I can't really put my finger on anything. Every part of making the movie, from writing the script to, making crazy props to filming it, it's all
Mhm.
so exciting. I mean, if I was independently wealthy, I've got so many scripts. I'd be making them every 6 months. I'd be making a new movie.
If I was independently wealthy, I'd be hiring people like you to, or financing people like you to make your movies and whatnot. Because I, I, that's the thing. I've gotten to know a few other independent directors, and I can certainly see the talent. So it's like I would love nothing more for them to get their, including yourself, get their just due in
Yeah.
the in the genre for sure. So what was so obviously you did practically everything yourself other than other than the acting. So how did you go about finding the actors, and what was the audition process like for that?
There's a thing down here in North Carolina called Southern Casting, and
Mhm.
I have been using that since probably 2004, 2005. And it's a fantastic site. It's completely free, and you just send them an email and give them the details.
Mhm.
They post it, and then you just wait for the emails to come in. And I've always I always want to give everybody a shot. And so everything I've ever done, from commercials, music videos,
Mhm.
whatever, I don't care if they're SAG, if they're not SAG, if they've never acted, I give them a shot. We had over 350 people audition for Do No
Wow.
Harm, and 5 states. People were driving from Virginia, South Carolina, and the talent was amazing. And there were some that, I gave them a shot. There's just no way that they were ready to act. They were just terrible. Uh, it was just awful. I mean, one of the funniest parts was, I had all the girls that auditioned,
Mhm.
uh, they had to scream, because I was looking for, which I ended up using,
Mhm.
is because a couple of the scenes, I wanted a horrific, blood
Right.
curdling scream. And so I felt like, let's just say my actress that I picked was good, but she didn't have a good scream. Well, I could always overdub it,
Right.
which I ended up doing, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Because the girl in the scene behind me, by the way, we haven't even said, this is the movie playing behind me.
Yeah, I kept on thinking about it. Yes, for those of you watching, in the background is Do No Harm there, right behind Don's left shoulder there. So you can kind of see some um little bit of reel there of it. So
Yeah, so this scene right here, the young lady in that scene, um, I I kept telling her, I need you to, you're in terrible pain. And she was, "Ah, ah," and I'm like, I know more than that. And I mean, I couldn't get her after, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, maybe more than that. I just could tell I wasn't gonna get out of her what I wanted. So I'm the kind of director that I'm not gonna make somebody feel uncomfortable, especially
Mhm.
when they're not getting paid.
Right.
They're getting paid peanuts.
Yeah.
It might be a little different if I was a SAG actor and you've got millions of dollars on the line, but,
Yeah.
I'm kind of at the mercy of these people helping me out. So I knew immediately, that I would just overdub her. And so, just for a little trivia, the girl Brittany, the blonde-headed girl right here,
Mhm.
she's the one screaming in that horrific scene.
Oh, wow.
So I had her come in and do
So she
ADR.
had the scream,
Oh my
but
god.
she
Yes.
got to do,
Yeah.
that's a good way of improvising, I guess, thinking on your feet while making the movie, because you obviously don't wanna, like, just fire her just because she can't
Oh,
quite
I
get that
can't fire.
right. Well, yeah, it's like,
What's
couldn't
funny
anyway if
is
you wanted to, but
in that particular scene, the girl that was supposed to be in it literally canceled on me the day before we were gonna film.
Oh, wow.
So Katie, the one that actually did the scene, she was
Mhm.
really doing me a favor. So that's why I was saying I could not,
Yeah.
I had to go with her because there was no other option. Uh,
Well, it worked out well because I would have never guessed that it was overdubbed. It seemed like a well, I guess it was an authentic scream, just wasn't coming from her lungs then.
right. Yeah. So crazy little things like that. And another thing, my wife, one of the sound effects I was mixing one night.
Mhm.
And so when during the surgery scene, you hear some bones cracking,
Right.
that's
Oh, yeah.
actually my wife breaking chicken bones. She was doing chicken
Oh.
and rice that night. And so she was like pulling the chicken bones apart. She's like, "Hey, listen to that." So we literally have the mic like right on her breaking chicken bones. So if you watch that scene, it is creepy.
Gonna have to rewatch that and listen because, that was, like, one of the creepier, tense scenes in the movie there, so that's fascinating,
Chicken
you got
bones.
the chicken bones. Wouldn't have been able to do that probably with, rib bones or was there, they're too big to crack quite snap like that,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
imagine.
yeah. It was just crazy some of the stuff that we did.
So so you had mentioned, Clint Eastwood, obviously, and he is a terrific director besides actor, but what are some of the other directors that maybe have either influenced you or just directors you just enjoy their work overall?
Well, I have to tell you, as I was going over number 7, you've got the Gateway to Horror, and you're going to laugh when you hear this. My first introduction, I don't know how old I was. I think it was before middle school. I was real involved at this church, and our youth pastor showed us Night of the Living Dead in the
Oh.
church, in the church sanctuary.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm sure if anyone found out, they probably would have fired him. But that movie was the first horror movie I ever saw, and let me tell you, that movie, I think it still holds up. I could watch that movie right now, and it still gives me that scene where the little girl's killing her mom with the spade.
Oh, I know.
I mean, that is a just classic, and I'd have to say, George is probably the first, director that influenced me with Night of the Living Dead, and that's made on like a shoestring budget, like Do No Harm.
Oh, yeah, and you're right, it still holds up, it's still highly regarded, and when you think of that came out what, 68, 69, I think, somewhere
Yeah,
around there. So
yeah.
think of how ahead of its time it was. I mean,
Oh my
granted,
god.
horror movies of that decade were beginning to start pushing the envelope anyway,
Yeah.
and that one I think definitely ran with it for sure. And
M my, the youth director, he used to, "He's coming to get you, Barbara. He's coming to get you." He would do that, like, all the time, and, we're little kids, and we're, like, getting freaked out.
well, it's a good thing you didn't like show Rosemary's Baby or something like that instead. That'd been even worse.
Yeah, I don't think with today, I don't know if he would have gotten away with that.
No, I'm pretty sure he probably wouldn't have. Um, yeah, so
But
that kinda leads up. Night of the Living Dead was really the movie that kinda started your interest into horror. Were there any other movies that had a lasting impression on you?
yes, I've got my list here in order. The
Oh,
next movie, which some people are going to say, well, that's not horror. Well, Ridley Scott said it was. Alien.
Oh, it's
Uh,
definitely horror
it's
for
horror
sure.
in a spaceship.
Hmm.
And that movie is one of my favorites. I'd say it's in the top 10.
Oh, it's in
That
my top 10 too.
that's just an outstanding movie. The claustrophobia of the set, and it's just so well done. The water dripping, why would a ship have water dripping? But all these things just worked, you know?
Oh, I know. It's and that's a movie too that really, if you think about it, takes a while for it to really build up. It's not until the chest burster scene that you go, "Oh,
Yeah.
wow, they're not
Oh,
messing around here, really."
yeah.
Um, what I like too about this is how it subverted your expectations because the first character we meet is John Hurt's character, Kane, as he wakes
Mhm.
up. So you probably think if you're watching it for the first time, you're probably thinking, oh, he's going to be the main character that I'm going to be following throughout the movie. Of course, he ends up being the first one killed in the movie. So I wonder
Mhm.
if Ridley Scott did that on purpose. We shot that scene like that just to kind of mess with people's expectations.
I don't know, but Ridley is probably my second favorite director.
Hmm.
I have all his films. I study his films. He's just a fantastic director. Um, and then I'm going to go down my list here. A lot of people, not many people even talk about this. Poltergeist, the first one.
Okay.
Steven Spielberg, not really known for horror, but that's kind of a popcorn horror, but it's still, I think it's creepy. It's
Yeah,
creepy.
it is when you figure the subject matter, and that's like I'm trying to think. I don't think that was rated R, and I think it came out before they came out with a PG-13 rating, so that
Hmm.
might have gotten a PG rating. But either way, it was like kind of like if it wasn't R, it was a very soft R, but it was
Yeah.
like would have been like a good what do you want to call it? A gateway for younger viewers to get into horror for like teenagers and preteens probably to get into that.
Yeah. And one of the things that stuck with me is, you know, I spent a lot of time mixing Do No Harm because of the sound.
Uh-huh.
And in Poltergeist, uh, that Carol Ann character, when she's like, and you hear,
Right.
you remember that?
Yeah.
That affected me too. I mean, that gave me chills just thinking about it. So that stuck with me. But you don't hear too many people even mention Poltergeist. I don't think, I like Steven Spielberg. He's made some
Mhm.
great films, but to me, Spielberg's gotten better as he's aged, like Munich, Minority Report. He's gotten away from the B popcorn stuff. Uh,
Lincoln. That's
Lincoln.
that's a very underrated one. Well, I'm a big history buff
Me
anyway,
too. Me
so
too.
that movie was I was gonna probably enjoy that no matter what.
Yeah.
But with Poltergeist, there's always been this I don't know a controversy or not because it is brought up quite a bit amongst other YouTube shows that I've watched where Toby Hooper was also involved in it. To what extent, I don't know. It's like one of those I guess you would call it urban legends that Steven Spielberg did hire him to direct that film, but for whatever reasons, maybe there was a falling out and Spielberg took over. So no one knows for sure how much of that movie is Spielberg and how much of it is Toby Hooper.
Interesting. See, now I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's just some stuff I've heard because some people will say, no, that's a Toby Hooper movie, not a Spielberg. So,
Well, now I'm
which
going to do
I
some
wasn't
research.
aware of it either, but
I love, I'm a big buff of reading, like on the
mm,
IMDb, all the little trivia stuff. So I'll definitely, when we get off here, that's what
have to look that up.
I'm gonna look that up. Um, then The Thing, John Carpenter,
Oh, yeah.
uh, again, it's kind of flirting with the sci-fi, but that's horror.
Oh, that's horror without a doubt.
Yeah, and those crazy creatures that they built. I mean, that's just fantastic stuff.
Yeah, the fact that it was all practical effects and oh yeah, I mean, the thing about horror can go into other genres and
Yeah,
still be horror, and oftentimes sci-fi is one that often mixes with and normally does really well when it does that. But yeah, for sure, the thing is, what's crazy about the thing is it bombed basically,
I know.
and over the years, it's become this. Most people consider it probably one of their top five, top 10 favorite horror movies of all time.
Well, I love what's his name? The Disney actor, the Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell.
I love Kurt Russell.
Yeah, he's perfect in that role.
He's fantastic. But I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure I go through my list. This one's gonna be um kind of missed. I don't know. Did you see the Wolfman, the one with Anthony Hopkins? It's not too old, less than 10 years ago.
Was that the one that also had Benicio del
Yes,
Toro? I
yes.
have not seen that one,
You need
no.
to watch that this weekend. It is so good, and the way they do the wolf scenes, it's just, oh my god. It's brutal. It's so good. You should watch it this
Yeah, I'll
weekend.
have to give that one a try. I mean, I've heard about it, I just haven't gotten to seen that. I've seen the one that Jack Nicholson did, back that was,
I
like, in
don't
the
know if I s
'90s, I
I
think
don't
it
know if I've
was.
seen that.
Yeah, and that was good, that was good. Kinda like an old I really love the original Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr., and I
Yeah,
like The Howling,
right.
um, but
That's a good
I don't
one.
yeah, Howling's a favorite of one of my top ones.
Yeah. And then this one's also going to kind of throw you for a loop. But as I was thinking about this, I was kind of thinking, uh, again, it's one of those crossover things. Planet of the Apes, the original with Charlton Heston. I mean, talking apes, putting humans
Yeah,
in
I
cages, that's horror.
yeah, I could see the horror elements of it, and really, of course, the biggest horror is when you find out at the very
Yeah,
end of the movie
right.
what has happened. He's been on Earth the whole time because they, of course, blew it up, and that's
Yeah.
why hence why the, apes took over.
Because I think a lot of people, when they think of horror, they just think blood and guts,
Mhm.
chopping people to bits. But I guess for me, it's more psychological horror.
Right.
And that's, I guess, what I'm more drawn to. And a lot of
Mhm.
people, they had, even said, how come you didn't do more blood in your do no harm? Well, again, that was budget.
Yeah.
Uh, it was budget. I mean, because you start spraying a set down with blood and then you got to reshoot it. Well, how are you going to do that? You
Exactly.
you're
And
gonna
then you have a big mess to clean up too.
right, and then that's another day you gotta film, you gotta put your actors up in the
Mhm.
hotel again, you got their clothes, you gotta get another, pair of clothes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
those are all the things
Things
that,
people don't think about for
no, they
sure.
they just, "Ah, no, but they don't know. You're sitting there crunching numbers, and I'm like, that's gonna put me over, $8,000 just to shoot that one scene, and
And you
you
only have
gotta.
7,000 to begin with.
Yeah, and another thing too is I really wanted to market, a little bit of the film. I didn't have any money to market.
Right.
I barely had money to pay the fees to get into film festivals. So, all those things. Like when you look at today's movies, they
Mhm.
got $5 million on the marketing budget just to put it out. Where you
Oh,
see
I
an
know.
ad after ad after ad. Every single commercial break. Coming this summer, and they've got the
It always
money.
kills me though, maybe I shouldn't, but whenever we have these movies anymore, these big studio movies that cost 100, $200 million and they flop, but
Yeah.
then some small little film that only cost a few $1 million ends up quadrupling its budget or whatever and
Yeah.
does really well. Always kind of like that because I guess I like root for the underdogs, but
Yeah, me too. And I don't know, when I talk about big budget, I don't even know if I think I could make every one of my films, no matter what film I picked. I don't think I could go over $5 million, um, because I just don't see. Um, I wouldn't waste so much. I've been on so many big sets, you know, as an
Mhm.
extra. I've done some commercials that were like big budget. They waste so much money. It's absolutely, it drives
Oh,
me
I bet.
crazy. I mean, there's been a couple of commercials that I did where I was just a PA. And I asked them, "What are you guys going to do with craft services? All this leftover food?" And they're like, "Oh, we'll just throw it away unless you want it." I'm like, "Hell yeah, I want it." And I ended up, I did a Domino's commercial, and then when I did On My Last Breath, that food that we had on that set that night was from that Domino's commercial that they were going to throw away. You know, it's just insane. And I mean, there's like granola bars, there's M&Ms, there's potato chips. It's not, you know, instead of just having a few granola bars, they literally, if you've been on these big sets, it'll just be a table full of crap, you know, and they don't even use it.
Yeah, it's amazing waste, and they wonder why. They're obviously not as smart of businessmen as they are, because if, well, if anything, you could at least take that stuff to the local food bank or something, you would
Yeah,
think,
yeah. I
instead of
was on
throwing it away.
a show here in Wilmington, and they were serving mahi mahi to the extras. And I stuffed myself because I'm like, where am I going to get mahi
Wow.
mahi fillet? And it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and most people are like, man, I'm just going home. And me and a couple other guys, we were just sitting there eating mahi, man, like we'd never eaten before. You know, like, but I mean, just think about that.
Awesome.
Instead of
No,
getting
you
like
take, hey, might as
Captain
well.
D's or something, you know, we're gonna get mahi mahi, fresh mahi.
Oh, Captain. I haven't had Captain D's in forever. They don't have them here in where I live, but
I
when I
used to
lived in
live.
Indiana, they had a few Captain D's, but
Yeah, there you go. You want some more cracklings with that?
yeah,
You remember that?
it was a long time ago, but
Yeah, I haven't eaten at Captain D's in probably 20
I
years.
just assume make my own, but
Yeah.
we don't even have Long John Silvers anymore, so like they've kind of like, well, I'm getting off. Now we're talking about like fried fish now, but yeah.
All right, let's get back to
So
so yeah, I think we've covered all the questions on your list here.
yeah, I think there's one. I guess one other one is: do you plan on? Are there any plans of making another movie at any point? Do you see yourself happening? See it happening?
I I wish, I mean, I think about it all the time. You know, I still see it in my head. I want to do it, but it's
Mm,
just, you know, without going into a lot of detail, you know, I don't know how with streaming, how do you even make money? You know, like, let's just say that I get the movie made, but then, you
uh-huh.
know, the movie gets chopped up and it gets distributed here, it gets distributed here, and it's like, um, you know, like when Do No Harm came out, DVDs were still really popular,
Right.
and I was doing really well. I mean, it was crazy. People were buying DVDs, and I sold them for 12.50, and that include the shipping, and I'd make about 5.5, $6 per DVD because I only did 100 at a time because I couldn't afford to do, you know, if I was able to say make 1,000
Mm,
copies, I'd probably make more, but I would make 100 at a time, and when I got a little low, I'd make another 100, and I was doing really well. But then when streaming happened, you know, like I was telling you, I got 27,000 views, and I haven't seen a dime from that yet. And I might never see another, you know, I might not see a dime from it. So that's the thing that,
uh kind of
again, I go back to being, if I was independently wealthy, I would just make a movie because I love doing it. But the reality is, um, I I have to have money to make a film.
right.
You can't just, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, you can, you know, you can get people that'll volunteer and blah, blah, blah."
Well,
Yeah,
you could, but they might not be any good.
yeah, and then you run into, they'll volunteer for a little bit and then they get tired and then now you've lost your lead character.
Right.
You know, I've been there, done that. I mean, I've been doing this low budget thing, and it's hard
Mm,
enough to get people to show up when you're paying them $50, $80 a night.
right.
Because to be honest, when we were filming this, we took a little. My wife, we had already had a vacation planned, and we were gone for 2 weeks. We come back. I had to do some pickups with Bo. I couldn't get him to come back. I had a really hard time because he kind of got, that's why you shoot a film all at once. You
Right.
keep that train going. And so by the time I got Bo to come back to the house, he was just like in a fog. And I had to
Ah.
like kind of kick him around and say, dude, man, what's wrong with you? And but it was because he'd kind of gotten out of the whole mode.
Right.
And so that's kind of that, when people say, oh, you should just do this, you just do that. It's really, really difficult. I will say this. I have this script idea. If I could find just a few actors, I wouldn't pay them. Um, just I have this idea. It's crazy. There's this structure. There's a state park that I like to hike at,
Mm.
and there's this big, huge piece of concrete. I don't know how it got out there because it's in the middle of the forest. I mean, it looks like a piece of interstate, like an overpass or something. It's like this big T, and you can see it.
Uh-huh.
If I sent you the satellite, you can see it from
Oh,
Google.
wow.
And so one day as I was hiking, I got this weird sensation like, what if that's like some kind of alien craft and it's pulling me into it and it's doing crazy stuff with my mind. And so I started writing down this script, and the whole thing, the premise would be you don't know what's real and what the guy's dreaming. Is it a dream? Is it real? And I keep
Oh,
saying
wow.
I'm gonna try to maybe make that. Um, just to make it. Who cares if it makes any money? But again, you have to still think about I've got a scene written where the main character is talking to a police officer. Well, no police station's going to let you use their insignia.
Right.
So just right there off the bat, I'd have to get some kind of fake uniform. Well, that probably cost me $100
Yeah.
just just for a shirt, maybe a badge and a belt. So I mean, those are the things that I think about, and people just go, "Oh, we'll just get some police officer." And I'm like, they're not going to do that because they're liable. You know,
Exactly.
they can't just go, you can't just come and have some sheriff be in your film and the film shows him, killing people or something, and then that sheriff gets sued,
Yeah.
so but yeah, so to answer your
Well,
question, it kills me that I have
mhm.
all the abilities that I have. I want to make more movies, but there's just
Yeah.
you can't
It's just,
it's just tough.
yeah. Unless you find the right financier, I guess, to back you, and that's probably harder than it's even harder than it does sound anyway. So
Yeah,
now everyone can view your movie on see on your YouTube channel, which is Don John's Music, if I remember correctly, is the
that's
name of
correct.
that.
Yeah.
And it's called Do No Harm. Now, you also said you had a website as well. What's the name of the website?
I have 2 websites. I have one for my music, donjohnsmusic.com, and then I have justicesparkfilms.com, which was my film company. I did have it incorporated, and then, things just kinda started slowing down. I just let it go because I was just paying, taxes to the state to have
Right.
an LLC that really wasn't doing anything for me. It was just basically liability that we wanted when we made the
Mhm.
film just to protect my wife and I. Um, but you can see all the films on Amazon as well. And that's one thing that
Okay.
I'll tell people that when you watch it on YouTube, as of right now, I don't even know if I'm going to see any money from it. But if you really want to help me out, and I've had a couple people on Slasher that said they wanted to buy it. So you can go on Amazon and I'll get about 70 cents, which is a lot more than what all these streaming services get. So if you really want to support
Zero.
it, yeah, if you
Yeah.
want to support independent filmmakers, don't use your Netflix, don't use your Amazon Prime because that's going to Jeff Bezos and all the you
Right.
know corporations. But when you really want to help an artist, and that goes for music as well, don't just stream it. Buy it from the artist. And like if you were to buy one of my songs at 99 cents, again, I'm going to get about 75 cents of that. And that would really help me out. Like if people like right now, like if 1,000 people bought that movie tonight or even just rented it,
Yeah.
and not watch it on Prime. Because I'll tell you the secret, I get 16 cents if you watch the movie on Prime. That's all I get.
Wow.
16 cents.
Well, I'll tell you what here. Well, you do this. Send me the link to where people can purchase that on Amazon or rent it,
Okay. Okay.
and I will put it in our show notes here in the comments section. So make sure we get that out there so people know where to go and where you at least get paid for doing that. So
And also
for
too,
sure.
yeah,
Mhm.
and if there's you're talking about finance folks, if there's somebody out there that, is listening to both of us, you've got some movies that I mean some scripts that you would love to see, help us out. We're independent guys trying to make a living, and I mean, I'm the guy. I'll take your script and turn it into a movie. But we have
And
to,
he will,
yeah,
and
and
he'll do a good job with it too.
we just have to have money.
Yep.
I mean, you can't open a donut shop for free. I mean, it take,
Unfortunately, it'd be great if he could. Of course, he might
yeah,
not sell it. It might eat all the profits, but
yeah. I mean, everything that you try to create takes money. I mean,
no,
that's just reality. But for some reason, people think that making movies should be, free. You know,
no. Yeah, and you're right, and especially independent directors and those that work on those movies certainly deserve to get paid for the work that they put into it, and not have all of it go to Zuckerberg or Bezos or whomever. But that's another conversation for another day. So
yes,
I don't
yes.
want him to pull the plug on me here on
I know,
YouTube.
I know. They're literally
I know.
allowing us to be here.
I know. And of course, I sell my books through Amazon too.
I
So
know, I know.
yeah. So
What are you gonna
we,
do?
yeah. Well, Don, it was great having you on, and hope the movie continues to get. Hope we get some more eyes on the movie, and maybe someday, if the situation happens, we'll see another movie coming out of you. So thanks for joining us tonight, and hope and thanks everyone for watching. And like I said, I'll put a link in the description showing where you can find Don's movie. And please like, share, and subscribe. And we will catch you next time.
Thanks for having me, Josh. I really enjoyed it.
You're welcome.